Hey, what is going on, guys? This is SMEB Reviews. It's time to take a look at the ninth studio album from the band Foo Fighters, Concrete and Gold. Let's get to it. Concrete and Gold finds the band in a very safe place. There's nothing offensive, but there's also nothing that brings the listener to want to continue to listen. It's very walked over ground, and it sounds like very much just fan service, because if you are not already a fan of this band, this is not something that you're going to get into. It seems like something that they've walked over or other bands of the same vein have done many times. Songs like Run, while technically proficient, are very bland because it's just a very repetitive and very walked over style of music. It's something that honestly sounds a lot like their other music or other music by bands in that same kind of genre. It's nothing that just makes that grabs you and makes you want to continue to listen. It's very same. It's very much the same as everything else they do, and it's hard to get interested in this album. It's an album that really there's a lot of diversity, a lot of good technical proficiency, and but it just there's no reason to listen to it because there's so many other bands who have already done this so many times before. And Run just sets the tone for the album. It was the lead-off single, and it's the first track if you exclude the little intro track, T-Shirts, which is only has a run length of like a minute 30, so it's a very short track. So this is really your first taste, and it's nothing interesting. It's something that we've heard a million times. It's and the whole album just follows suit. It's very good music. They took skill to play it, and honestly, the guitar licks are really nice. The drums are really punchy. Grohl's vocals are very rough but very nice, and it's very good, but it's just nothing that makes me want to revisit it. I have no reason to listen to this again because if I want to hear songs like this, there's a ton of other albums that I can choose from that sound very similar. I mean, if you want to hear this kind of music, you can just turn to Pearl Jam or something. I mean, there's lots of bands in that same kind of vein of music that you could turn to instead of listening to this album. Not that this album's bad, but just it has no reason for you to come back to. It gives you no reason to explore their discography because it's just neutral. I mean, it's something that I feel like I've heard a million times, even though obviously I haven't heard this album before. It's just something that I feel like I've heard a ton of times just by listening to all those types of alternative rock, harder rock kind of bands. It's just not something that stands out. It does not stand out. And that's not to say that there's not diversity. I'm not trying to just say that all of this sounds very like generic late 90s, early 2000s rock, because that's not the case. There are slower songs like Happy Ever After, parentheses, 0 Hour. It's a very slow acoustic song, but it just is not. It's just not interesting. It's just an acoustic song. It is one of the better tracks in the album, I'll admit, but all of the songs, even though there are some diversities in the styles, it it all is something that's been walked over a million times. And that's the problem with this album, is it just has no real identity for itself. It just sounds like a compilation of random songs from other bands or other albums and gives you no reason to want to revisit. But as I said, I do have to praise the diversity. It is not all just that very early 2000s sound of rock. It is not that. It's not just distorted guitars. It's there are some much slower tracks, some pretty interesting tracks. Sunday Rain, which features Paul McCartney on drums, which actually sounds really good. It's a slower, less of a get into it song and just a slow but still hard song. There's a lot of diversity from that acoustic sounds to the slower sounds to just the headbanging anthems like Run or The Sky is a Neighborhood. One song that must be praised is The Sky is a Neighborhood. It starts off with just some vocal ahs and a really nice, clean guitar riff, and then in comes Grohl's rough vocals to just interrupt that, and some punchy drums. It's really jarring to hear, but yet it's so good, and the whole track just battles with that garage rock kind of sound and the really crisp, clean production, and it mixes a very raucous sound with a very beautiful sound, and it does it perfectly. It's one of the best tracks on the album. It is the best track on the album. It's just the perfect mix of chaos and creation, and it's so good. But besides the songs I've specifically praised, the album is forgettable and really boring. And take the title track, Concrete and Gold. It it changes. There are some different elements of the song, but yet it's so unbelievably boring and does nothing. And it's just a slog to get through. It is the hardest song for me to get through. And once you're done, you're just met with a minute to 2 minutes of just distortion. And it's such an awful track. I don't understand why the thoughts behind that track, because it's just a boring track in my opinion. And it covers no new ground, as does the whole album. Lyrically, the album's nothing special, but also don't feel like that's the biggest dock. Some of these songs are meant to be just, those headbang anthems, and the quicker you learn a song, their lyrics, you can explore the guitars and the different instruments much easier. And I feel like that's what they want to do, because that's where they shine. The songs are repetitive and they don't stand out, but at least they are technically proficient. And I think that's what the band wants you to get to. They want to just give you simple lyrics so you understand it all, and then you can just move on and focus on that they're good at their instruments. Overall, it is not an awful album by any means, but it just doesn't do anything new. It is repetitive throughout the album, and it just does not really give you any reason to return to it, and unfortunately that's why I have to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching. It really means a lot. Foo Fighters are not a band I really know too much about, but I did enjoy getting to listen to this album and getting to express my opinions on it. It just was a very samey album. It really was. There was no new grounds covered. But what did you guys think? Maybe I'm in the minority here. I thought it was good, just no reason for me to ever listen to it again, really. I really appreciate you guys watching. Leave your comments on what you thought or any suggestions, and I'll see you guys later.